All right. Hello, everyone. And once again, thank you for joining this webinar on SOLIDWORKS PDM data migration and integration strategies. My name is Mark Young and with XLM Solutions. If anyone has any issues seeing my screen or hearing me, please raise your hand or put a question out and I'll make sure to address it. With that being said, a quick introduction for those of you who are not aware of XLM Solutions. We're what we consider a complete PLM solution provider, and we're providing, services and solutions around mainly the Dassault product lines, obviously being SolidWorks PDM, SolidWorks Manage, doing a lot of stuff now today with 3D Experience or 3D Experience Works, and also the legacy solution Innovia Smart Team. We've been around since 2005, so we're going on our 18th year in business providing, such services. We really pride ourselves for being, on the forefront of technology, both from business best practices and technical expertise in the industry. We are also considered a SolidWorks certified service partner. So that means we're not a reseller of SolidWorks, but we're certified and recognized by SolidWorks to provide professional services and solutions around their products. We really dedicate ourselves to quality. We're always on the forefront of new technologies, new industry trends to provide the best solutions to our customers. And as today we're going to talk mainly about migrations and integrations. We really provide all aspects of PDM, PLM implementations, everything from discovery workshops, site assessments, general implementation, customizations, integrations, data migrations, and training and support. Obviously, I'll be going through various PowerPoints and talking about them. But if there's any questions, I'll work to either answer them interactively or at the end of the session. So please, if you do have questions, type them in. So today we'll talk a little bit about SolidWorks data migration strategies and various tools to migrate SolidWorks data mainly into PDM, but we'll also talk about migrating SolidWorks data into 3D Experience as well. Talk a little bit about Autodesk Vault migrations to PDM, because those are topics we come across a lot, and talk about how we can merge SolidWorks PDM Vaults together. We'll then go into preparing for production migrations, and then kind of change from a data migration topic more into a integration topic, and talk about a SharePoint to SolidWorks PDM integration. We've been doing a series of presentations during the summer. So if you have been on some of our other presentations, some of this material will be repeated, but there will be new material as well. So when loading data into SolidWorks PDM, a lot of people can say that migrating data to any PDM system or PLM system can be a daunting task. But with diligent planning and thorough testing, and testing being key, the process can go smoothly. So we'll talk about some strategies to ease the migration pain. When we deal with data migrations, the first step is really to analyze the data to be loaded. So, you really need to do your due diligence of understanding what you're dealing with and how you want to load it. So I always try to break those analysis into 4 main buckets. The first with, understanding the legacy data. Is it going to be, file folder based? Does it exist on a file system? Or is it contained in some type of legacy PDM, PLM system? Usually the legacy systems will have a database behind it and some type of file vault or store. Sometimes we're dealing with hard copies that may be scanned. I mean, normally in 2023, we're not coming across that very often, But in the past, we've dealt with, companies that had filing cabinets with drawings that we needed to actually, scan and migrate in. And when dealing with data, you want to keep in mind whether it's CAD data that has links and relationships. Maybe it's data that have files like Office images, PDFs, or it could just be metadata itself. Something that describes an item or a part and the relationship or bill of material between the parts. So getting a really understanding of what we're dealing with, what we need to load, and then understand, do we have access to that data or expertise to get the data? So if it's in a third-party system, do we have, the knowledge to get the data out of the third-party system? Do we need to provide or work with an external partner that has the specialties within those systems to get the data out for us? Usually when, dealing with migrations, there's two parts. There's an extraction part and an import part. Um, Importing PDM, we got covered. Usually we can do the extraction part as well, but we can't be an expert in every system. So sometimes we may want to involve a third party or provide other help to do that. Is all the data there? Could there be missing data? And if so, how are we going to deal with missing data, or why is there missing data? And then, do we need to bring in additional experts to help with that extraction piece? Also, we want to establish the mapping rules. It's really easy for people to say, yeah, I have all my system in system X. Now make it work in SolidWorks PDM. But there's a lot of details that go along with how to get that data into the system and how should it behave. So, what is that folder structure going to look like? What folders will that data reside in? What are the variable mappings? How are we going to get data to show up in the various variable names, like number, revision, description, whatever variables you have set up? What states will those data get mapped to, and even what workflows within those states will that data get mapped to? And is there any other logic that needs to be in place to help map or transform the data? For example, a very simple example, maybe in the source system, revisions were numeric, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but in PDM, revisions will be alpha, A, B, C, D, etc. So, do we have to transform a numeric revision to an alpha revision? And then finally, at the end, at the beginning, I should say, we won't know exact numbers, but we should have a good understanding about the amount of data we'll be dealing with, and how long we have to migrate it. Can we shut down the systems during business hours to migrate? Do we have to migrate it over a weekend? Should we plan on a long weekend? But start thinking about what that cutover plan is and how that may affect the whole migration process. Can we do a big bang migration, or perhaps have to deal with delta migrations to avoid downtime? And with any migration project, not necessarily it's related to migration, but I think it's always a good time to review current processes and update maybe how data is being used or consumed within the business. When moving from one system to another system like SolidWorks PDM, you don't want to just reinvent the wheel. You really want to understand what's working, what's not working. You want to implement SolidWorks PDM or any PLM for that matter based on its best practices and how it works best. And it's a really good opportunity to review current processes, and update them, and perhaps configure the new PDM system to work more efficiently or based on a review of how the company works versus just trying to do it the same way you always did it. And the key thing though is if usually when you're doing a migration project, the PDM or the PLM system is still being revised as you work on the migration. So any changes to the data model, to how the system's configured, must be obviously taken into account when doing the migration or building the migration. With any migration project, there's always data cleanup. So you know, as many times as we see, oh yeah, our data's clean, we don't need to worry about it. You know, usually there's issues with the data, and you know, we listed a couple key issues that we come across. You know, duplicate part numbers per file. So you have part number 123 that points to, you know, washer1.sld.prt, and you have part number 456 that points to, you know, washer1.sld.prt. Are they the same part number and we just got created twice, or do those actually represent different, you know, different parts or different washers in the system? Maybe we have duplicate file names. So in that case, maybe we have you know, washer1.sld.prt, and that, you know, is used multiple times. Is that actually a duplicate, or are those different washers that just got named the same way? Missing or incorrect file attributes. You know, the three probably key attributes that I always harp on is part number, revision, and description. Now, there could be more, like, you know, created by, approved date, etc. But you know, the key data that needs to be there, are they available, or is that data missing? And if so, do we have to find a way to get it and fill it in? Missing or incorrect file associations or links. Obviously, that's dealing a lot with CAD data. You know, are you know, assembly, subassembly / part links available? Drawing model links available, or do we have broken links or bad references where we can't find the referenced data? File revisions not current. You know, are you using not, you know, if we wanted to just load latest data, for example, you know, do we have assemblies that are pointing to non-latest children, and if so, how should that be handled? Non-compliance, revision or versioning schemes. Again, you know, what happens if PDM is set up for alpha revisions, yet, you know, the legacy data has numeric revisions, or vice versa. So making sure that the revision schemes that are being used comply with the legacy data that we need to load, or have a way to handle it if we come across a non-compliant revision. And then just general validity of the data. So these are general reports that we like to run to see what we're dealing with. Half the battle is understanding what you have, and the second half is cleaning up as necessary. So we've developed, you know, some utilities to help run various reports against the data, and then come back, you know, with possible issues. Sometimes we automate fixes if possible, and at least report on it so it can be fixed. When we're talking about loading data, there's a couple ways to load data into SolidWorks PDM. And one of them is kind of developing your own custom migration tools, and they can be done by using the various, you know, SolidWorks PDM APIs, you know, possibly direct database statements, though that may not be fully supported, etc. So when you're developing your own migration tool, you really have a lot of flexibility. You know, you can control how data is going to be revised through revision history. You can set up your own logic for attribute mappings, log every event, whether it's an extraction event or an import event, etc. You can, you know, really do whatever you want, but they probably take, you know, the most work to do. Though, you know, we've at XLM have involved various projects and developed some of our own tools. So as you can see, we have a work group to PDM tool, a smart team to PDM tool, an Autodesk Vault to PDM tool, DB Works to PDM, and even PDM to PDM, which we'll talk about our PDM merge. But definitely, you know, through customization, whether, you know, you're using a .NET or a language, you can really have a lot of power to develop some very unique and customer specific data migration solutions. That being said, SolidWorks for resellers also has a tool to help you migrate data into 3D Experience. called the SOLIDWORKS PDM XML migration tool. And this is a tool that comes from SOLIDWORKS, and we actually use this tool a lot to import data. So as long as you can get your data into a format, an XML format supported by this tool can let you migrate the data into 3D Experience, and it can do variable mappings, state mappings, control what projects you want to load or what folders you want to load, control it if you want to load full history or just latest. There's a lot of configurable settings to this tool. So it's a powerful tool, and probably many of you on this call are already familiar with it. But there are some limitations to the tool to be aware of. So if you wanted to do a many-to-one mapping, so let's say you had drawn by in your source file, you want to map that to two variables, created by and another field called drawn by as well. So you can't do one-to-many mappings or many-to-one mappings. Maybe you have in your source you have created by and drawn by, but they should just go to drawn by. So it only really supports one-to-one mappings. Now there's ways around it, but out of the box, the tool really only supports one-to-one mappings of variables. It doesn't support multiple revision schemes. So if you had a prototype revision scheme that's numeric and a release revision scheme as alpha, it doesn't support those two different revision schemes yet. Again, there's workarounds to support that, where you can kind of merge, have one main revision scheme that has both numeric and alpha in it, and then break it off after the migration to the separate migration schemes. The tool also loads data in batches of roughly 1,000, and if for some reason a batch crashes, and there's ways for batches to crash, the whole batch fails. So one piece of bad data could cause 1,000 files to fail when loading. Also, if you have bad revision mappings, the revisions don't map the revision sequence, it can cause a full batch to fail as well, or revisions not get set to the full batch. The tool follows all the configured PDM rules. So if you have a rule that a file should get migrated into a release state, you will need to have a condition from the initial state to the release state to allow that file to get transitioned. If the rules that you set up in the migration are not doable per out of the box, it's not going to be able to do it, and it fails. And then finally, performance. As it works, it's not the fastest tool out there. So 100,000 files may take 48 to 72 hours to load. So depending on the number of files you have, you got to work backwards based on that downtime to understand, can you load it all in a weekend, let's say, or you need to come up with an alternative way to load the data to support minimal downtimes. The good thing is this tool does support delta migrations. So if you cannot load all the data in a weekend time, you can come up with some delta solutions for the tool. Talking about delta migrations, normally we recommend loading data, in a big bang migration. Do it all at once. And there's ways to speed up migrations. Making sure you have SSD drives, increasing the memory, perhaps have multiple drives, for better input-output. For example, the database on one drive and the vault on another drive, and the tool running the code on another computer. But there's times, as much as you try to optimize a migration, you still cannot get it done in over a weekend. We've loaded millions of records before. And usually in those cases, we do a delta migration. So with the XML import tool, there's certain keys that the tool supports, which is really file name and version comments. So if the file name and the version comments from the XML file that the tool uses matches the file name and the version comments in PDM, it will say, oh, this already exists, I don't need to migrate it. And it'll support links and references, everything. If it's a new file name or a new version comment, then it'll say, oh, it's new, let me create it or create a new version. And so what you need to do is, or what we'll do is, we'll create, an initial XML import file for the, full migration, let that run, whether it takes 3 weeks, and then we'll create another XML file, for that delta load that we'll do over a weekend. And you could use that second XML file as is to load the data, or what we do is we have tools to basically compare the original XML file to the new XML file and only keep what's changed in it, which reduces the size of the XML file significantly, and use that for the delta migration. So we've built tools to better optimize delta migrations. And the key thing is, obviously you're testing the migration throughout, but don't just test loading the main data. You should also test performing the delta migration as well, if you need a delta migration. So if you feel you're going to need a delta migration, make sure that's in your test plan. Just to talk about Autodesk Vault to PDM, we run into this a lot of times, so we felt it made sense to put a slide in on here. So we have the ability to read the Autodesk Vault and extract an XML file format to it. We do that and then make use of the SOLIDWORKS PDM import tool to import that XML data. And we can do this, either through the Vault APIs or direct database queries. One thing in Vault, like PDM, every time you change something, it could be just metadata, it creates a new version of the file. So you could get multiple versions in PDM or in Vault, where the file actually doesn't change. So so you need to understand, are you going to load every version or just versions where the file changes itself? Though the XML import tool will require a file for every version. So if you do want to load all versions, your PDM Vault may get a lot bigger because you would have a file for each version. There's also the concept of an Autodesk project file that contains library settings, templates, content center files, which is like toolbox and search paths. So you need to be aware of that, and usually you want that project file inside the PDM Vault to make use of it as well. The import tool makes use of the Inventor API, so you need to have Inventor installed on the computer you're doing the migration. And you need all the files you're migrating to be the same version of the Inventor that's installed locally. If you have files of different Inventor versions, it can cause issues. So Autodesk has a tool to upgrade all the Inventor files to the same version, and that should be run before that. And anyone who's doing a Vault migration should have there's Vault Basic and Professional. So you kind of need to know what version's being used. With Professional, there's the concept of items along with documents. So you may need to migrate data of the item and the document, not just the document. And also performance, because the migration makes use of Inventor APIs, the performance for loading Inventor data is usually slower than SOLIDWORKS data. So keep that in mind as well. PDM merge. So PDM merge usually is what I say is a special case of doing a PDM migration. But customers want to merge their PDM vaults. Why would you merge? Certain companies may have different divisions, and each created a vault for each division, but now want to increase collaboration between the divisions, so they all want to work in the same vault. Each Vault, obviously it's set of servers, database, etc. So it may be from an IT point of view to reduce overhead. So maintain multiple databases or multiple servers, you can just, maintain one bigger one. If a site or facility is closing and the data needs to go somewhere, maybe put it into a different facility's PDM Vault that's already up and running. And then, maybe the most common one, companies today are acquiring or merging with different companies, and you'll say that your company has PDM, you buy another company that also has a PDM Vault. Now you need to work together. Hence, you want to put your vaults together. So doing a merge project, I say, is usually the same or more complex of a data migration project. And there's things to consider. What are the revision mappings between the sites? Are they both working using the same revision schemes or different ones? What are the workflow mappings? Are the same workflows or different workflows, or will you have two different sets of workflows in the merge system? Duplicate file names. If you have duplicate file names turned on, and the source system has the same file name, you need a way to handle it. So we've put some logic in to put like special prefixes or suffixes on the file name to determine that it's a duplicate, but still allow it to be merged in. When you're loading the data, you're going to want to load latest only, full history, or latest in work plus only released. So there's different histories that we can migrate in. Understand the toolbox. If toolbox is being used, are they using the same toolboxes, or do you have one site customize the toolbox versus the other site using a different set of toolbox files? So any type of toolbox or design library should be considered. And then there's non-supported data that you really can't merge, and that's more around items. Not that many people are using items, but items or cut lists don't always come over directly. And this little thing is, we have a YouTube video out there. We have a tool to merge PDM Vault. So if anyone needs or has customers that need to merge a vault, definitely look at our YouTube video and please reach out to me. I'd be happy to discuss it more with you. So now we'll switch a little bit about migration to 3D experience. So definitely today, and in the pretty much in the immediate or literally for the last couple of months, we can now migrate data to 3D experience, both cloud and on-premise. There's different technologies to migrate the data depending if you're migrating to a on-premise or an on-cloud environment. 3D Experience Works is on cloud only, but 3D Experience can come in a cloud or on-premise flavor. So, depending on the type of data that you need to migrate, there's different ways to do it. There's what's considered FTK, or File Transfer Toolkit, which would allow loading data from a file system to 3D Experience. There's what's called EDAT or STK or ETK, which will allow you to load SOLIDWORKS data from Smart Team or SOLIDWORKS PDM to an on-premise instance of the system. And now there's XTA, which will allow you to load data from SOLIDWORKS PDM or Smart Team to the 3D Experience Work or cloud instance. This is released, but still limited release. So I want to say there may be some kinks that still need to be worked out of it, but we now have a tool to load that data. And then finally, you can develop your own custom tools or web services to load data. So if you have, perhaps a data coming from ERP that you want to load in the system, or a set of files, just non-CAD documents you want to load in the system, you can also do this through various custom tools and web services that are provided through 3D Experience. it should be noted though, 3D Experience is very sensitive to data issues. So, if you have unsupported characters, not necessarily in the file names, but in configuration names, it may cause migrations to fail. If you have invalid relationships or broken links between files, or even between, the file exists, but the configuration doesn't exist, it can cause data to load. So it's very important to have data clean before you're using these tools to load the data, which goes back to this original slide here about having your data clean. And like I said, whether it's to SOLIDWORKS PDM or 3D Experience, we definitely have some tools to help make sure that it's clean. Talking about XTA a little bit more, which stands for Cloud Migration Assistant. So this is a tool or a package that Dassault will provide or sell. It comes with multiple tools, but as mentioned, it requires clean data, and you don't have any broken references among other scenarios. There's various configurable options, so you can configure through pre and post data manipulation, different data as necessary. The tool requires various licenses, so you get licenses for different test environments and different roles within 3D Experience that are required to use the technology that the tool is built upon. And as the tool is really geared to load data from SOLIDWORKS PDM or Smart Team, we strongly believe we can extend the tool to load data from other systems. So just like we can load data from Vault to SOLIDWORKS PDM, we should be able to load data, extend the tool to load data from Vault to 3D Experience. So we're really excited about this tool, and excited to work on various migrations using it to load data to the cloud. Another key thing is the tool can set revisions. So if your data is starting at revision D, this tool can load that data at revision D, where in the past you can only load it at revision A, which caused a lot of issues for customers that needed to load data. Another way to load data into 3D Experience, if you just need to load bill of material data, no files, but just need to load a product structure, there's a tool within the engineering release or Zen app that lets you point to a Excel file, and based on the level and the data in the Excel file, it will build a product structure in the system based on various data mappings that you set up. So this is out of the box functionality, though again there's limits. It's limited to 300 rows, so if you have a bill of material over 300 rows, you might need to do multiple imports or find another reason to load that data. And it cannot load other aspects to the bill of material, like materials or alternates. It doesn't support stuff like that. So it's a pretty simple structure for loading parts or physical products into the system. If you just want to load documents into the system, into 3D Experience through the bookmark editor, there's a way to point to a folder structure and then load all the files within that folder structure. This picture here may not be fully representative because I'm showing SOLIDWORKS files here. It's really geared to loading non-CAD data, but it can load all the data. So all the data would come in without really any metadata set, and all come into the in-work state, and all would come in at the initial revision. So if you needed to have the data come in at different states, have different revisions, set metadata, this probably is not the best tool, and we would need to do more of a custom tool. But just to get a folder of data into the system, definitely through Bookmark Editor, you can load a bunch of data. So testing the migration, as I alluded to, it's very important to test the migration. you will cover issues. You never migrate data the first time correctly. So there could be issues with the legacy data. There could be issues with broken links, blank fields, maybe bad formats. Like I said, you're trying to load a character, character data, alpha data into integer fields. Maybe it's your loading procedure where you're setting, the created by field, or in 3D Experience, the owner field, but the users don't already exist in the system. So you need to make sure you load users before loading, items. You'll run into issues. You'll need to fix the issues, whether it's cleaning up your legacy data. Maybe you can auto create rules to clean it up. Maybe you need to manually clean it up. Maybe you need to change your code that's generating the migration. Maybe you need to modify the PDM rules to handle the legacy data. So maybe if you created an integer variable in PDM, maybe you need to change that to be a character, variable. So it's different things that you'll come across that you'll need to fix. Make sure you document your loading procedures. Usually there's going to be various steps, and you're going to be repeating those steps because you never get it right the first time, maybe not even right the second time. So make sure you have documented all the steps to follow when you do your testing and finally your production migration. And with any changes, test again. Don't just assume your fix will fix the data. Test it and verify it and make sure it truly fixes it. In many cases, we've run into things where say, oh yeah, it was a small change, we're all set, we don't need to do another test migration. And then we go to do it for real and realize that small change really did have bigger consequences and caused issues and a lot of stress over the migration weekend. So, I'd say test whatever that final state's going to be, make sure it works within that final state. Pre-data loading planning, obviously you need to work with the business units, understand when the legacy system will be turned off. You should have a good time how long it'll take to load the data, and can figure out, is that over a weekend, business hours, et cetera, et cetera. Specify the data loading process. So all those documented events, make sure you have that done and documented, and a checklist of what you need to do to do the from start to finish the data migration, and identify various people that will be responsible for the different activities within that data loading process. And then with proper planning and testing, the final data loading should go smoothly. So, advices, follow your documented procedure, allow a little bit buffer time for unexpected issues, and prepare to support the users in the new system. There'll definitely be some learning curve that the new users, will need support on. So let's switch topics a little bit to integrating with PDM, and we come across SharePoint a lot, so we use that as the main integration piece. So, we found that many customers have SharePoint out there for some type of collaboration use, and not necessarily everyone has SOLIDWORKS PDM. So customers are looking ways to transfer data, i.e. to SharePoint. That being said, SharePoint is not a PDM or a PLM system. It doesn't support viewing CAD data. There's no markups or red lines. The data is housed inside the database, which can cause the database to grow fairly large. And the main thing is there's really lack of now SOLIDWORKS integration. So it doesn't know toolbox. It doesn't know what a configuration is. It doesn't know relationships between files. It has no bill of material functionality, and there's no built-in PDM functions in SolidWorks. So systems like that, whether it's SharePoint, ERP, et cetera, it obviously makes sense to integrate your PDM system to it. So for example, we say a customer with their PLM, PDM, and SharePoint. They want to ensure data consistency throughout the document lifecycle. They want to reduce potential complications. If a lot of times we'll see users actually manually copying data out of PDM and manually entering it in SharePoint or ERP. And when you manually do that, A, it causes errors. be that's some, usually an engineer doing stuff that is, non-available time. It's not productive time. And engineers can be expensive. So automating that really allows you to, save time and let engineers do what they should be doing, designing and engineering data, and reduce errors, and which we believe totally improves the efficiency throughout the engineering process. So we strongly believe in, even though that says SharePoint, integrations between your PDM system and your external systems, whether it be SharePoint or ERP. For SharePoint specifically, we've developed various types of integrations. So we have the ability to publish data and original data, whether it's a PDF or step file, from PDM to SharePoint. So in this scenario, SolidWorks drawing gets released, we'll automatically convert it to a PDF file, and then have that PDF file show up in SharePoint with all the metadata from the variable data card mapped to the SharePoint columns. We also have the ability to sync states between SharePoint and PDM. So depending on how you configured SharePoint, you can configure like a state in SharePoint, and changing the state in SharePoint can change the state in PDM, or changing the state in PDM can change the state in SharePoint. So in one of our scenarios, the release process actually was done in SharePoint. So when the data was released in SharePoint, it would automatically go back and release the data in SolidWorks PDM. And then you can also build custom SharePoint web parts, for example, to show, graphical information, or, various data that exists in PDM within SharePoint. And for those of you that are interested specifically with a SharePoint integration, again, we have another YouTube video of the SharePoint integration in action, and would be happy to discuss with anyone if you have a need to integrate PDM with SharePoint or any other system out there. So in conclusion, with whatever you're doing, whether it's a migration or an integration, it's very important to define the business requirements. And migration, integration, merge rules, whatever they are, a lot of the times these projects are more of business decisions of how they they want to work or migrate than doing the technical work. A lot of times it's harder coming out with the business rules or the business plan versus implementing the actual technical solution. So as mentioned, with proper planning and testing, such projects should go smoothly. And I'd say almost anything is possible. There has yet to be a scenario, migration, integration, et cetera, that we've not handled and provided the good results to our customers. So with that, I want to say thank you and open it up for any questions. If you do have questions, please type them into the chat. And I'll see. So one question came up regarding SharePoint integration, and it kind of says, how complicated is it to integrate SharePoint to PDM? And I'd say, again, that really depends on the business rules that the customer has. But in our scenario where we're publishing data from PDM to SharePoint, it's pretty straightforward. We can, per our tool, we could get someone up and running probably within a few hours. So so it's not that hard at the end of the day, but it really depends on what the customer needs. Can you put the link to SharePoint to PDM YouTube video? Yes, I will send that out. You will also get a copy of this presentation so you can get it, but I can definitely make that available to you guys. Let me real quick copy this, and I should be able to put it in chat here for everyone to get access to. Of course, it's not copying for some reason, but I will, if I can't get this to work, I'll definitely make sure to get it out there. Here we go. Oh, I guess it copied multiple times. Second question for a PDM merge, how long does such a project take? Again, it depends on the business needs, but usually we allocate, about 3 months from start to finish, from initial start to final production merge to run. It's probably around 10 to 15, billable days of work, but normally we allocate about at least 3 months to get the project finally completed. Yes, as mentioned, this presentation will be made public for everyone. And all right, that looks like questions for now. I will stick around a little bit longer if any more questions come in, but feel free, like I said, to type them in or per my information below, reach out to us directly. Oh. Oh. All right, actually we have a couple more questions here. Just having a little bit of a user difficulty getting to them. Okay, has customers had some success with migrating from on-premise Smart Team to 3D Experience Innovia Cloud Instance? Are there any of us left using Smart Team? So I'm actually not sure who wrote that question, but here's the answer. So yes, there are people still using Smart Team out there. We're still doing Smart Team upgrades and enhancements as we speak, but also a lot of Smart Team customers are looking at 3D Experience and other solutions. And the answer is we have not done a on-premise Smart Team to on-cloud 3D Experience migration yet, but with the onset of this tool, this XTAOC migration assistant, it does support the ability to migrate SolidWorks and CATIA data from Smart Team to 3D Experience on cloud. So if you are a Smart Team user and want to go to 3D Experience on cloud, there is a way to do it, but the technology is new. So I'm not going to say it's without issues, but there is a path forward to do those migrations. What about the other way from PDM to Smart Team? So a customer wants to do a PDM migration to Smart Team. We have not done it, but definitely is very doable, and we could do it if there's a need out there. Please reach out to me. I'd be happy to discuss that with you. Definitely, it's very doable. Really, in this presentation, we feel we could go any direction: 3D Experience, PDM, Smart Team. We could migrate from or to any of those systems in any direction if need be. All right. For those of you that are still on, thank you again. And if you do have any follow-up questions or comments, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much.